Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar from the Nature Positive University's team. My name is Henry Grubb, and I'll be your host today. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. We also have AI translated captions if you would like a different language, but we also have live interpretation into French and Spanish provided by our fantastic interpreters from Eco Interpreters. If you would like to access the French or Spanish live translation, just please click on the little globe icon down in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. It says interpretation, and you can select either French or Spanish, and that audio will also be available on the recording that we'll put onto YouTube later. So, NPU started in 2021 as a collaboration between researchers at the University of Oxford and the UN Environment Programme to try and form a sort of race to net zero style movement, but for the higher education sector's biodiversity impact, supported by the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We know that higher education has a massive global biodiversity footprint that needs to be dealt with. But universities have a unique power and influence in their communities and beyond, so can play a key role in tackling the climate and biodiversity crises. We have a 4-step pledge that commits our members to calculate their baseline impacts, set measurable targets, undertake specific actions using our refrain, reduce, restore, and renew framework, and finally, publicly report their progress. Since launching in 2022 at COP15 in Montreal, the Nature Positive University's community has grown to over 1,800 people from over 700 higher education institutions in over 100 countries, which is fantastic. And this includes 188 universities, colleges, and institutions that have specifically made a Nature Positive pledge. We also have our Student Ambassador program, which is continuing to develop and grow since it first launched. This year, we welcomed over 1,100 students from 60 different countries who have joined monthly Green Skills workshops on a variety of biodiversity topics. Sign-ups for next year's program are due to open in August, and we'll be sharing further details in an email to our mailing list soon and on our website. Today's webinar is all about our brand new verification scheme that we launched last month. For the first time, we are now offering independent verification of the actions your institution has taken towards being nature positive. This is a fantastic new scheme and an opportunity for your institution to show the world you mean business and that you have taken concrete, real steps, not just talk, towards the future we need to live in with harmony with nature. This scheme will bring verified universities and institutions several benefits, but the headlines are robustness and transparency from an independent review, official digital assets for you to use with your branding, and a spotlight on our website, plus verification serves as a tangible demonstration of your institution's work that helps support the community we are building within NPU. So just to introduce myself again, I'm Henry Grubb. I'm a socio-agroecology scientist here at the United Kingdom's Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. We also have Emily Stott, who is the Nature Positive University's coordinator over in the Department of Biology at the University of Oxford, and Holly Thompson, who is the project assistant for Nature Positive Universities, also at the University of Oxford. The agenda for today's webinar is as follows. We're going to hand over to Emily and Holly, who are going to give an introduction to the verification service. And then we are going to have 2 presentations from 2 universities who are planning to use the verification service and verify as nature positive universities. First, we're going to hear from Tom and Emma, who are at the University of Oxford. And then we're going to hear from Ulla, who is at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. And they're going to talk about why their universities are going to verify. And then finally, we're going to hear from Sam Barrett, who is the Chief of Youth Education and Advocacy at the United Nations Environment Programme. And he's going to explain why verification is such a great idea for your universities. As we're going through this webinar, please, if you have any questions for Emily or Holly or for our universities or for Sam at the United Nations Environment Programme, please put your questions in the chat box in Zoom. And do have a look through the questions that are being asked and give a thumbs up reaction if you want that question answered. We'll try and make sure we answer the most popular questions. So please write your question in the chat. So I think it's now time to hand over to Emily and Holly as our first speakers. So Emily and Holly, please take it away. And please, in the meantime, put your questions in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. As Henry said, my name is Holly and I'm the Project Assistant for Nature Positive Universities. And we are delighted to be here today to share information with all of you about our new verification service that we are piloting this year. This service aims to support institutions who've made the Nature Positive Pledge in their Nature Positive journey, providing an independent review of an institution's activities and their progress. Now, verification can currently be applied for in two different ways, depending on whether an institution has already made the Nature Positive Pledge. If a pledge has already been made by an institution, then there is a short pre-screening form that would need to be completed. Information that's submitted in this form, along with that was submitted as part of the 2025 health check form, which forms part of stage 4 of the pledge, reporting annually, as you can see here on the screen, will form the basis of evidence used in verification. If a pledge hasn't already been made, then this would need to be made in order to be able to be verified. Verification can be applied for at the time of pledging or at any time afterwards through the pre-screening form. Now, we would only advise selecting to apply when pledging if you have already completed work on all stages of the pledge. If you have not completed this work yet, then this is not the time to verify. The 4 steps of the pledge are highlighted here on the slide. And by making a pledge, institutions are committing to start a nature positive journey, incorporating a biodiversity baseline, targets, actions, and annual reporting, as I just mentioned. As part of verification, we will look for evidence of capacity and a plan to achieve measurable outcomes together with reporting on progress, with there being an opportunity to provide further evidence during the verification process if this is necessary. Verification is an annual process and is open to apply for throughout the year whenever an institution is ready to get verified, and this will last from the date of award. Moving on, this slide shows the specific timeline and process for verification. If you have already looked at our information pack, then you will have already seen this specific timeline. To start on the left-hand side, when an application for verification has been made in one of the 2 ways that I just described, we will review this information that's been submitted to us. And once approved, we will share a link to the University of Oxford's online store in order to make the payment. Once the payment has been received, we will then assess the forms and may contact the institution at this time to request further information if necessary. Once verification has been awarded, a badge will be issued that can be used on an institution's website and in their communications, and the verified institution and their activities will be spotlighted on the Nature Positive University's website. We will also contact the institution to request a summary for us to share on our website publicly. Now, there may be some instances where we cannot award verification based on the evidence that has been sent to us. And in that case, we would contact the institution and support them to provide additional evidence. I am now going to hand over to Emily, who's going to talk through the criteria and benefits for verification, as well as the costs and next steps. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Holly. And it's great to see so many familiar faces and names here. We're really proud of the community that we have developed at Nature Positive Universities. So we're excited to be able to offer this new verification service, building on the format of our Nature Positive Pledge. And as we've mentioned, in order to apply for verification, you have to have already made the Nature Positive Pledge. But more than that, there needs to be evidence of measurable progress towards nature positive outcomes, as demonstrated by action towards the 4 stages of the pledge. And there also needs to be capacity or dedicated resources to facilitate this action. So this could be, for example, a named member of staff responsible for this work, or the existence of a working group within your institution. So onto the costs. During the first year of piloting this service, the cost is £1,000, with a discount available for lower income institutions, and with verification lasting for a year. But if an institution does sign up for this service this year in 2026, we can guarantee this pilot price for 2 years. If you are from a lower income institution and cannot afford the full cost of this service, please do reach out to us and we can discuss a discount with you. The next slide, please, Holly. So I'd now like to share some of the benefits of the service. So firstly, this offers an independent review of your institutional actions and activities to check that you're making progress towards nature positive outcomes. We do provide a digital badge, which you can add to institutional websites, to email banners, and to other communications to show your leadership for nature. We will spotlight all verified institutions on the NPU website in our newsletters and on social media. And we will include a summary or highlights of your activities. Next, verification supports the core costs of the NPU initiative, such as our website, staff time, webinars, and student support for our student ambassador program. And it will allow us to continue to build an inclusive community of higher education institutions across 100 countries. Finally, it's a great way to demonstrate meaningful contributions towards a nature positive future. And the next slide. So in terms of next steps, if you haven't already done so, we warmly invite you to join our community and make the institutional Nature Positive Pledge. And whilst we encourage students to advocate for their institutions making this pledge, the pledge itself and verification do need to be made by a senior member of staff or management that are able to speak on behalf of their institution. You will find a downloadable information pack on the services page of our website, along with a form to express interest in some of our other services that we are launching this year, which include a biodiversity footprinting pilot and nature positive training. The QR code for this webpage is on the screen now. So if you have already pledged and you're ready to verify, as Holly mentioned, the pre-screening form can be accessed on our website on that same services page. And if you haven't yet made a pledge, you can apply for verification as part of your initial pledge or at a later date through our website. So if you have any other questions after today's session, or you would like to arrange a one-to-one call with us, please reach out. We will be more than happy to have a call with you. Thank you for listening, and I'll now hand back to Henry for the next part of today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Emily and Holly, for giving us that introduction to our new verification service. So we're now going to hear from a couple of universities who have decided that they do want to take part in that verification service. And first up, we're going to head over to the University of Oxford. So I'm going to hand over to Tom and Emma. We'll just switch the screens around and then we should be able to get underway.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, and good to be with you wherever you're joining us from. Just get this up and running so you can see those. So yeah, I'm Tom Hill. I'm Associate Director of Sustainability at University of Oxford. And Emma from my team is with me, and she is the technical lead responsible for the nature positive work in our team. So I just wanted to start with a bit of background about us as an institution. So we've got a lot of nature we're responsible for. We got 3,300 acres of green space. Possibly acres isn't the right terminology for everyone on the call, but it's a great deal of habitats, woodlands, meadows, etc. across our estate. We've got over 260 buildings, around which there's also quite a good deal of green space. A varied supply chain with the largest spend on laboratory equipment, computers, and construction. Quite a significant construction program. And also, it's important to note that the university is managed separately from the colleges. Lots of you will be familiar with the university colleges. So although we don't have direct control over those, there is a possibility for this to sort of ripple out to colleges, part of the University of Oxford's family. So just sort of setting the scene on why we're interested in this space. So the university back in 2019 started work on a sustainability strategy, environmental sustainability strategy. That piece of work took a couple of years, and the strategy put in place in 2021 had two core goals, so net zero carbon and net gain for biodiversity, both to be achieved by 2035. So a 15-year strategy effectively when it was put in. There was 4 enablers beneath that, and then 10 priorities, of which biodiversity was one. And there are other priorities related to resource use, which obviously impacts supply chain, etc., which has a nature connotation. So this is what we've been working to for the last 5 years, with biodiversity and nature having equal standing with net zero carbon. Now, biodiversity net gain seemed like the right terminology back in 2021. But we're in a bit of a transition phase. When we put in our strategy back in 2021, we said every 5 years of this 15-year strategy, we'll come back and have a look, do a review, and have a think about the progress we've made, any tweaks, any changes we need to make it fit for purpose going forward. So we've been right in the middle of that review over the course of the last year. And the conclusions from that piece of work have been to reaffirm those 2035 strategic commitments for both carbon and nature. And really, that was on the basis that they are still absolutely aligned to the leading research going on in this space and the leadership role that the University of Oxford likes to hold within the higher education space and globally. But one of the reflections we had back on the last 5 years is that we really needed to tighten governance to drive the pace of change we needed to make progress towards those targets. And I think sort of hearing Henry's introduction at the start of this call, it's really about looking for things that are robust, transparent, and really give us that kind of momentum to go forward. So the way we've chosen to operationalize that is to split our strategy into work streams. We've got 13 work streams, which give us the sort of really clear format to set out the change we're delivering in each of those focus areas between now and 2035. And another really key part of that sort of governance tightening process was about third-party verification. Back in 2021, we hadn't introduced the concept of third-party verification and validation of our progress towards our targets, and colleagues really felt that was a critical change to enact as part of this review. When we looked at carbon, the sort of third-party verification space was fairly obvious there. SBTi, ISO, two leading bodies who are verifying people's targets and progress towards them in that space. But in biodiversity in the UK, there was some quite major changes we needed to reflect. So back in 2021, our net gain for biodiversity target had a similar sentiment to our net zero target, but over the course of the years since 2021, biodiversity net gain gained a statutory definition in the UK, and that meant that it no longer encapsulated everything we wanted to deliver under our nature targets. So we needed to deliver a change. So over the course of the last year, we've been looking for opportunities, what we could use to wrap our ambitions around nature. So the reason we've chosen to work with the NPU verification service is because it has that strategic fit for us, and also because it offers a flexible process that wraps around the work we already have underway. Now, I've already looked at the pledge process in the bottom left there, but just to sort of reaffirm that was absolutely the right fit for us, gave us that robustness, that transparency that we were looking for, in this process of change. And I won't read it through, but the text on the right there is our commitment around nature positive in our revised strategy, just to give you a sense of how that aligns with the NPU pledge and verification service. So now I'm going to hand over to Emma, who's going to talk through the more technical aspects of our work in this space. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. As Tom mentioned earlier, I am our biodiversity manager in Tom's team, and I'm just going to talk through, I guess, what we're doing on the 4 steps of the pledge, and therefore why it fits quite well with what we're doing. So step 1 is assess our baseline, and well, it's worth saying that I've split all of these slides into our estate and into our supply chain because we look at those 2 things quite differently. So I'm going to go through each step for each of those. And this was our initial thinking on assessing our baseline for our estate and supply chain. So on our estate, we originally were thinking about doing a baseline for our entire estate and using something called the Biodiversity Net Gain metric, which, as Tom mentioned, is a statutory metric that exists in the UK and has done for a couple of years now. This was developed primarily for building developments, but has been used for various uses since it's come into play. And we're not going to do that anymore, but it was helpful thinking to think about it at the beginning. And then for our supply chain, this might be a piece of work that a lot of you recognise. We, in 2021, I think, or 2022, published our supply chain analysis or biodiversity footprint of our supply chain in Nature, using one of the labs in the University of Oxford, where we estimated species per year, which is a measure of species extinction, and the impact of that for our supply chain. So that was our initial thinking on both of these, both of our baselines. I guess we started thinking about these quite a long time ago, and things have changed slightly over the last few years. So Tom, if you could go to the next slide, please. What we're now shifting towards for both of these things is a focused, rather than on the entirety of both of those areas, is a focus down to the narrowing down to the more impactful of both of these areas, basically. So for our estate, rather than doing the entire thing, what we're going to do is focus just on some priority locations across our estate, which still add up to over 1,000 hectares of land, so it's still a very large area. But those are the areas that we believe we can make the most gains. And rather than using the biodiversity net gain metric to measure whether we're making progress, which is known to be quite a blunt measure of biodiversity, we're going to be using a variety of indicator species, and we're going to survey them at set times and set locations over the next 10 years to demonstrate how our biodiversity is changing across the estate. And that will be done hopefully using a lot of engagement from students and citizen science, which will be really interesting and helpful, having nature positive universities on board for that. And then in our supply chain, as I mentioned, a lot of this has developed a lot over the last couple of years with the development of SPTN, which many of you may have heard of, or TNFD. And the consensus there is that rather than footprinting your entire biodiversity footprint all the time, it's better to focus on your high impact areas. So that's, I think, the direction we're going to go in, and our high impact areas are construction, laboratory equipment, and IT equipment broadly. So we're going to be focusing on those areas for our biodiversity impact. And again, rather than focusing on species per year, which can be quite a confusing measure, I think, we're going to be shifting hopefully to pressure indicators, which is something else that SPTN recommends, which are the ones on the screen. So land use and land use change, water use, soil pollution, and water pollution. And this is something that we're working on at the moment, so it's not complete, but is what we'll be moving towards. And I thought it's just worth showing that our approach is changing all the time, and it doesn't mean things don't have to be complete, I suppose, to get the nature positive verification, as long as you're sort of working in the right direction. I think that's the main point. Next slide, Tom. So step 2 of the steps for the pledge is to set the SMART targets. So very specifically, we've got 2 targets for our estate. So that's to see an increase in biodiversity across the priority locations by 2035. So that's what I just spoke about before with those surveys. And then we have another target for all of our developments submitted after it was a legal requirement, need to have 20% BNG rather than the 10% BNG that's required. And that's BNG is a UK specific building target for biodiversity net gain. And we're basically saying we want our developments to have 10% more than the statutory requirement. So those are our specific SMART targets for the estate. And then for our supply chain, we're still setting the very specific SMART targets for that. But as I mentioned, they'll be focused largely on those high impact areas and those pressure indicators. But that's a work in progress. Next slide, Tom. So step 3 of the pledge is to act and to influence. And I can talk about a few things we're doing on our estate here. So we're restoring a hay meadow called Park Farm, which is a 100-acre site in the middle of Oxford City. We're restoring the grazing regimes to ensure that the floristic diversity there remains high because it's a very special site. It's got a very rare grassland community. We're doing various other bits there. So rotational coppicing of blackthorn, which is a plant that the brown hair-streaked butterfly, which is a rare butterfly species in the UK, lays its eggs. To ensure that we're coppicing it to ensure that there's enough young shoots for the butterflies to lay its eggs on. Also building snake hibernacula and all sorts of things. So that's one of our larger projects we have at the university. We also have lots of smaller projects all over the estate. So even though we're focusing on a few areas, that doesn't exclude everything else. So on a lot of our buildings, we're putting up swift boxes or various different bird boxes where appropriate, and sometimes bat boxes. And we also have other small projects. So I've put something called birthwort there, which is a plant species that we've been restoring growing conditions for because it was planted by Benedictine monks in the 12th century, and we want to keep it growing there as a medicinal plant. So it's got a lot of historic importance for the site. We also do a lot of public and student engagement, and we've been really trying to do a lot of that this year, largely involving free walks for the public and free walks aimed at students and staff. Those might be on specific topics like badgers or bees or around specific sites, and are just trying to engage people on nature. And we also have something called the Sustainable Design Guide, which guides our building developments to be better for various things, including biodiversity. And finally, on our supply chain, as I mentioned, this is a work in progress, but we're working to identify our biggest impact areas in those in construction, lab equipment and IT equipment. And we're going to create an action plan for how to reduce the impacts of each of these. But that's a work in progress. And the next slide, Tom. And finally, we make sure we report everything annually on our estate and our supply chain in our annual report and accounts. So that's part of the university's financial reporting. And yeah, it's great to have it in alongside the financial reports. And then just one more slide. So from our point of view, there's multiple benefits for verifying with nature positive universities. It aligns with our refreshed target wording, which is very helpful. It's an independent validation for us. And I know it's confusing because we both have the University of Oxford logo. But to be clear, our teams are completely separate. So we consider it as an independent validation of what we're doing. And I'm sure if we weren't doing very well, the Nature Positive Universities team would tell us. We think it meets a gap in the market. The other verifications, well, the only other one really is SPTN, and that is very expensive and still in progress and quite inaccessible at the moment. So this sort of meets that gap where there isn't anything else for us to do. It's got the flexible requirements, which I think is great because it means universities can be doing a variety of work to get this verification. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be perfect to get it. You just have to be trying. And from our point of view, it's fairly low cost, so it's very accessible for us, which we think is also great. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll hand over back to Henry, I think.
Thank you so much, Emma and Tom, for that presentation explaining a little bit more about the University of Oxford and why you're planning to verify. That's fantastic to hear. We're now going to hand over to our next speaker, who is Ulla from the University of Jyväskylä. So we're going to flip over to the other side of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea to Finland from England. So Ulla, when you're ready, you can share your slides and then we can get underway.
Thank you.
And oh, I'm very sorry to interrupt, Ulla, but please do remember, of course, you can put your questions in the chat as Ulla continues to speak and vote for the questions that we have already had come through. Ulla, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Henry, and thank you everyone for having me here. Quite a pleasure to come after University of Oxford because we are a lot smaller university. But still, yeah, I work in the division of policy and planning at the University of Jyväskylä. So as you said, Henry, this is in central Finland, so northern Europe. And I will give you now 3 reasons why we have decided to verify our work. And before that, I will also give a very brief description of our university. I will start with a little bit of history of who we are. Our university was founded in 1863, and it was actually established as a teacher training seminary. And what made it special at the time was that this was the first institution in Finland that provided teacher educations in the Finnish language. So we used to have Swedish as an academic language, and Finnish was sort of the language of the people. So this was the first seminary that did this cultural thing that provided education in the Finnish language. And the other thing was it was also available for women. So this was the first teacher training seminary where women were studying with the men. And today we are a multidisciplinary research university. We have 6 faculties and 5 independent institutes. So we have almost 3,000 staff members, over 15,000 degree students, and over 25,000 adult students at our open university. This picture is from this May. I don't know if anybody who is listening was able to participate. We had our first Wisdom Days conference for sustainability transitions, and we had over 300 researchers and students to present here of their work of the sustainability, which was really, really nice. And we still have the history quite present on our campus. We have applied for the UNESCO label, but we have already been awarded the European Heritage label for this Seminaarinmäki campus, which is the old part of the campus. It was awarded because it highlights the significance of the Finnish and European education system as a basis for equal and democratic society. And we can still have the older buildings here, and there you can see also some of the newer buildings. These are from the 1950s, if there's some architecture enthusiasts, you know Alvar Aalto, and this is the Alvar Aalto campus area. And now the campus, of course, has grown a lot. So what you see there, sort of these brownish buildings, they are the old part, the Seminaarinmäki, and then there's the newer part, and we are now on both sides of the lake. And there are the newer buildings which have the faculties of, for instance, mathematics and sciences, and then business school. But then to Nature Positive and why we verify. The reason number 1 is quality. We have made Nature Positive commitments. We are one of the founding members of the Nature Positive Universities Network, And we have made the pledge, and we have also included this to the official university strategy to promote nature positivity. We aim for the state of planetary well-being. And in our environmental program that is called Roadmap to Planetary Wellbeing, there it also has the goals to nature positive. I haven't linked it here because we are currently updating it. It was last updated 2022, so a long time ago now, because this is advancing in a bit of a pace. This all new indicators and new ways to measure biodiversity are coming all the time. So we hope to get the updated program this year with all the new targets and action plans. But then the whole Finnish university sector is also committed. We have Rectors Council of Finnish Universities, that is UNIFI. We have 12 theses on sustainable development and responsibility, and the thesis number 7 includes the nature positive. And we updated these theses last year. They were approved by all the rectors of the Finnish universities. But before that, we did quite a lot of conceptual work with the universities of applied sciences as well. We have a group in FinArma, which is the Finnish Association of Research Managers and Administrators. So there is a sustainability group that is an open group for all research universities and universities of applied sciences, and they're a subgroup for nature positive. And we sat in workshops and in many meetings, and we tried to define these concepts of lots of us had pledged to become carbon neutral, but then there wasn't an agreement on what it actually means, what kind of categories, scope 3 would we have to include to these claims, and the same with the nature positive. So we have done this work, and based on that, the theses were also updated and then approved by the rectors. And there will be very soon a research paper out, hopefully this or next week, that is titled From Carbon Neutral to Nature Positive Higher Education Institutes, which describes a little bit this process that we did together with the universities here. So we have made all these commitments, but we do think that the external verification is necessary to assure the quality of these commitments, because it's sort of easy still to make these commitments because nobody wants to cause climate change and nobody wants to cause biodiversity loss. So it's sort of easy deal to make and say that, yes, of course, we want to be nature positive. But then what it actually means and how to make it credible and measurable and transparent and how to get the real impact, then that is why we need also the external verification and independent verification. So as a quality assurance, and it helps with the accountability and also increases the trust with the stakeholders. And then reason number 2 is that it does strengthen our sustainability work. We hope whether any kind of decision comes from this verification service, whether it's that, okay, you need to work more with this to achieve this verification, or yes, you are good in this and you are in the right path, it does strengthen the sustainability work. You all are very familiar that we are living sort of like in a changing world at the moment, where I think the momentum for sustainability acts is not the same now that it was some years ago. There is growing denial, even like anti-science and denial of scientific proof and research when it's not something that somebody wants to hear. There are these anti-ESG narratives, and so universities are not immune to all these changes that are happening in the society. So it's very important to have this message that says that this is important, that it is important for universities to pursue nature positive. And I think especially for our students, because we have magnificent students here studying, and they are the future professionals. They are also the generation that will face a lot of the consequences of the biodiversity loss and the climate change. And we teach them about nature positive. We teach them about planetary well-being. For instance, we have the planetary well-being. The first course, the MOOC course, is mandatory for everybody who graduate from our university, the bachelor's degree. But they are open online MOOC courses, so they are also available for all of you and for the whole community. There are several planetary well-being courses that are in English and in Finnish and can be studied from all over the world. So, but the point is that our students are being taught that this is important, and then we study this also, we research this, and we teach them how to do these things. But then when we actually have to do it and change our behavior and change the way that we are doing research, change the way we are doing teaching, change the way what we eat, how we move and everything. So to have this whole institution approach that your whole organization would be sustainable and not just teaching sustainability. It's not we know that it's easier said than done, that we should integrate biodiversity in all decision making and everything we do. It's in practice, it's difficult. It is happening, but it's difficult. It's not required by law or by many funders yet. So we need this kind of support and strength and this sort of like force that backs up this sustainability work that we are doing. Then the reason number 3, this is the last one, is the extended accountability. We do value a lot this global nature positive universities network, and we recognize that by using the network services, we also support the existence of this network. So I give an example here that we have calculated the baseline for our campus biodiversity as well. We did it last summer because that was the first summer that our researchers had finished this a way to measure the biodiversity in a built-in environment, to give it like a value, a numerical value. So now we have the baseline, and now we can follow and see that how our actions that we do on campus, for instance, turning our lawns into meadows, what kind of impact it has on the biodiversity. So we can actually monitor it here. But then we have also calculated the biodiversity impact of our value chain. And this map shows this is the results from the first research, and it shows where the biodiversity impacts of our value chains are, and over 90% it's outside of Finland, and we have no idea which ecosystems have been harmed or which species and we cannot say that we would counterbalance these in Finland, because that just would not be fair. We have to counterbalance these globally, because of course it's also the ecosystem services that are getting damaged, and so it's part of the social sustainability as well, and our global responsibility. So to be able to do this counterbalancing these impacts as well, we need these collaborative and collective efforts. So for there we see that Nature Positive University as a network is an important channel and a partner to do this, especially in the future. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Ulla. That was fantastic to hear more about the University of Jyväskylä and the reasons why you are going to verify. Thank you both to Oxford and to Jyväskylä for those fantastic presentations. Now, we're going to change slightly who's speaking, because since NPU started back in 2022, we have been supported throughout that time by the United Nations Environment Programme, and our partnerships with UNEP have been absolutely crucial to growing this network to where we are today. And so I'm delighted that Sam Barrett from UNEP has joined us this morning /afternoon/evening to be able to speak about why, from UNEP's perspective, verification is such a fantastic step. So I'll hand over to Sam to speak now.
Yeah, no, thanks, Henry. So just a few thoughts from me. So first of all, on the verification premise, I had a few different things to build on what we've heard from Ulla before me and Emma and Tom as well, which is, I think, first of all, it's an affirmation of status. It sets a baseline for progress and it identifies areas for focus. It opens up a discussion. So what could you do? Where do you do it? I think it elevates it to leadership. So this matters. Nature is often unseen, unheard, unnoticed, but it gives it a premise, which I think is important. I think also universities have a trigger impact. So what you do triggers others either adjacent to you or close to you to think about what they could do to make that difference. And I think the role of this is to have a critical friend so that leadership happens at three different paces. There are those that are emerging, there are those that are growing, and there are those that are pioneers. And for me, all of those entry points have effects on different parts of that chain. So the pioneers set the pace for emerging leaders to follow. The emerging leaders hold a hand back to those that are starting to pull them up, and those that are emerging to kind of move through that whole process through. So for me, what I like about this is that leadership is never perfect. It's always imperfect. It has cracks, it has flaws, and it needs to be put together whereby you don't look to be the best in class, you look to be the best that you can be. And so the premise of this allows you to think about where is your leadership opportunity and what is your special capability or capacity where you sit within the world, within the biodiversity opportunity that was in your kind of within your shadow, if you like. And then what can you do where you have a high degree of competency to make the greatest difference that you can? So I think verification for me will be something that you will need to build your own narrative around. It's not something that can be prescribed like a chemist. You need to go and work out what you need to put into that. But I think it is a useful thing to have, and it moves it away from a pledge model where the pledge can be hard to ascertain to a commitment model whereby there is some traction and some tension, and it creates hopefully some critical friendship whereby your opportunity to go up the chain increases. And then I was thinking about why does this matter and what is the business case to do this? Because universities are often kind of under pressure on lots of different fronts where there's a million and one things to have done by last week that won't get done. So why this thing on top of everything else? And I think for me, there are three different journeys that I like to talk about: the journey within, the journey with others, and the journey into the world. And I think you need to build your own value proposition about why verification is the right thing to do, that is true to your story and true to the audience that you need to work with to get them to a position of yes. So the journey within universities, large estates, the center of cities, so massive cogs, large numbers of people passing through the doors every day, and opportunities for specific action on specific species to really think about what you can do that is kind of an opportunity for where you sit. So like I'm really interested in what we heard about swifts, like these kind of black screaming species that fill the skies, and the fact we've lost 20% of the nesting population in Oxford is really depressing, and that's coming so fast so quickly. And so thinking about how you identify locations in different parts of the city of Oxford where there is a population that you could try and extend by increasing 80 nests to maybe 100 to 120. So you can recover that 20% quite quickly with strong intention if you work out what is the specific issue that's at play. There is a large journey in between Africa and Oxford where the University of Oxford doesn't have a huge amount of influence. But what does happen in the streets of Cowley, the streets of North Oxford and Summertown is something where Oxford can have some purchase. So I really like the idea of choosing a hero opportunity where nature can come back. So it's a source of hope rather than a source of despair. So that journey within, I think, is great. And who knew the power of Bertwort? But I'm sure I'm going to find out more about that. And then the other thing is the journey with others. I always think of this journey with peers and pioneers, and we have peers and pioneers, those that are just ahead of us and those that are alongside us and those that are behind us. And I always think about there are often common problems that have common solutions, and the amount of innovation you need to be successful is much less than you think it might be. And also, the impact on nature is out of sight, out of mind, and buried in your supply chain, and often undertaken by people that have no real specific empathy with nature, but have unbelievable influence around what is it that you're buying from who, to what degree, to what consequence. So really thinking about the value chain opportunity as a place to spend maybe the bulk of your time, because that might be where the bulk of the problem is important, alongside some kind of hopefully high profile investments whereby the hard to see stuff gets done, but the visual opportunities get seen. So being nature positive can be visible and invisible, but there's a blend of the two where the difference gets made. And I think the other thing I would say is the importance of just thinking around the governance of how you really deliver for nature. Because the university, I always think as the Athenian square where ideas come together. And so what you can do with farmers, with large parts of industry that might be on your doorstep, with students, with other kind of local politicians. So your influence, I think, is outsized. And so what you do, I do think within others is quite profound. So don't pursue this as an academic opportunity. Pursue this as a civic opportunity to think about what is the difference that you can make within your kind of sphere of geography, so you can drive that harder and faster. And then the last one is to build on what Ulla said, which is the journey into the world. Whether we like it or not, we are all connected, and nature connects us more strongly and profoundly than anything. So the rivers of the Thames that flows from Oxford to London out through Gravesend at the bottom of the sea is a great story of a river that comes straight through the city of Oxford down to the end. And so for me, what I think about this is being part of Nature Positive is part of being a bigger story that's connected through different parts of the migratory species and the journeys that we have. And at UNEP, I think what our role is to be, what do I say? I think we're a kind of custodian of Nature Positive to encourage you to go further and faster. We'll be pushing on ambition so that it has some dynamic tension and some grit. But also there are opportunities in UNEP with the Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, some of our normative guidance that we put together. So we think universities are not just delivering on research that we need to deliver the science to make the world we need it to be, but delivering on the impact and the outcomes that students then can take forward into their careers to be the next generation that can do magic to try and keep the world on track where we need it to go. So yeah, I think Henry gave me a brief to talk about verification, why it's useful. But I really think for me, it's down to you to determine what you think is specific to what you can do to make the greatest difference. But I always think communities get a lot more done a lot more quickly when they work together. And if verification can be a way to accelerate that, then that's a very good thing for the world. So back to you, Henry. Thanks for the opportunity to say a few things.
Thank you so much, Sam. We really, really appreciate you being able to say some words on behalf of UNEP and to talk about verification in that way. I am going to provide some opportunity. We've had a few questions come in, and I want to be able to get those questions answered. We only have 5 minutes left of the webinar, so I'll ask the people to keep their answers quick, shall we say. But one of the questions that we had come in, and perhaps I'll direct this to Tom over at Oxford or Emma. You mentioned about momentum in your talk. So how much do you expect verification to be able to sort of catalyze new action as opposed to just sort of being a sort of stamp on action that you've done in the past?
Good question. I think keeping the answer brief, I think it's the cadence of annual verification that really helps. So I think we can set short-term targets. We've got the long-term targets of 2035, and then we'll have some beyond, but it's that sort of annual cadence, which I think will be really powerful for us.
Thank you, Tom. A question I wanted to direct, because this has come up as well, over to Emily or Holly, is about sort of what stage of university do you need to be in order to get verified? Obviously, we've just heard from Jyväskylä and Oxford. Both of these are European universities, but we are hoping that verification is going to be something for universities around the world. So is verification sort of only for advanced universities, or can universities that are earlier in their nature positive journeys also get verified, Emily?
Thank you. I think that's a really important question. So we've always strived for nature positive universities to be a truly inclusive global community, and we recognise that some people are just starting and some people have done a lot of work already. Also, the resources are vastly different. Some universities will have big teams of sustainability staff. Other universities, the work will be carried out largely by students and by academic staff in their free time. So I would say it's absolutely open to universities of any size and resource. The important thing is that there is somebody there to kind of lead action and to be a champion, and that there are steps along the way. So whether or not you have done a large baseline looking at all of your potential impacts, or whether you've focused on one area of campus, as long as you have carried out the steps of the pledge, so something in terms of your baselining, setting targets, working together to take actions and reporting, as long as that framework happens at your university, then it's the scale is flexible, and we completely welcome people of all types of universities.
I think that's a really important point to make. The scale is going to be different in different universities. The framework is what is important. The different stages is what is important. Whether your actions could form a book that is 50 pages long or is maybe just 2 pages long, as long as the different steps are there, that is the most important part. Just one last question I'll ask to Ulla in the remaining minutes we have left. This is a question that we had submitted earlier. What internal conversations do you think that verification might be able to bring about between different departments within the university? So, you've got maybe your estates and your finance, and then your leadership team, and of course the environmental team. How can verification promote conversations between these different departments?
Well, we have, of course, discussed it in our steering group, the sustainability steering group, and when we decided that we will verify, and now we're waiting to see the results of the verification process. So I think then we will discuss it in the university management team, that how we are doing, and it will guide a little bit of course, like where we put our efforts. We don't have so much resources to put into this work, so we have to prioritize a lot also that where to put the internal resources. And I think it will also help with this process that we are doing now, is that we are in the process of setting new targets for nature positive, and we are in this participatory process, and it's going to the university management board as well. So I think we are going to have discussions in the very top level now that we are updating the environmental plan, and this will help with that. But then we will start discussing with the university units, with the different faculties, with the departments where the actual work is then done. So because we have the commitment level is always high up, but then the actual work and the implementation, that is done in the units and in the faculties. So I think this will support a lot that process, and like I said in the presentation, it sort of like gives this backing to what we are saying. So it's not just our team that is saying we should do this, but it's been verified also.
Thank you so much, Ola. I think that's a really good way of putting that. I think maybe, Holly, if we share the final slides, because we are nearly basically out of time. Some of the words that I wrote down that we heard in the presentations today about verification: transparency, quality, accountability, robustness, momentum. these all words sort of mean, in my mind, sort of excellence, and that concept of sort of peers and pioneers and common problems, common solutions was something that Sam said. We really hope that verification is going to be an opportunity to sort of meet those criteria and fulfill that gap in the market that Tom and Emma spoke about for nature-based verifications in these ways. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers and to our eco-interpreters, Chloe, Tamara, Marta, and Maud, for providing today's French and Spanish live translations. Fantastic work. Here on this slide, we have a feedback link to a survey where you can share thoughts about today's webinar. Please make sure that you are signed up to our mailing list. There's a QR code here if you are not. And please check out our catalogue of past webinars. They are available on our YouTube channel, and this webinar will go up on our YouTube channel as well. Please remember to tag us when you post about your actions for nature, and follow us on our Instagram and LinkedIn pages. And finally, can I please draw your attention to our next webinar, which is next week on Thursday, the 11th of June, where we will hear from 2 Canadian institutions. So please make sure you are registered, and we will have live translation into English, French, and Spanish available again. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you next time.